This is Journey to Chinese Fluency podcast, episode number 12.
Embarrassing moment, culture insights, proven methods to achieve Chinese fluency. Skip that learning curve with the Journey to Chinese Fluency podcast. Now, your host, Victor Yang.
Hello everyone, Victor Yang here and welcome to Journey to Chinese Fluency. Our guest today is Andrei Zlotchevski. Andrei comes from Moscow, Russia. He started learning Chinese 6 years ago. Apart from speaking fluent Mandarin Chinese, he speaks Russian, French, and English all at native level. He is now 22 years old, currently pursuing a master's degree in mathematics at McGill University. His field of research is probability theory. Here's an interesting fact about Andrei. At the age of 11, he won an international mathematics competition, and almost exactly 10 years from that day, at age 21, he won the Chinese Bridge competition, which is a Chinese proficiency competition for foreign college students. That's some great achievement right there. Hello, Andrei. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here with us today.
Hi, Victor. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here today.
So, Andrei, are you ready to share with us your journey to Chinese fluency?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Awesome. So, first of all, please help us to fill in the blank a bit for the introduction.
As Victor said, I'm from Moscow, Russia. I was born in Moscow, but at a young age, my family immigrated to Canada. And so actually I grew up almost my whole life in Montreal, Canada. And that's why I speak both English and French at a native level.
Great. So please share with our listeners, why did you start learning Chinese?
Yeah, so when I started learning Chinese, I was 16 years old, and that was grade 10. And back then, I was a little bit bored at school, and so I was looking for things to do in my spare time, me to challenge myself a bit. And then I remember we had a history teacher who kept saying that English is the international language today, and it might be forever, but you never know. Maybe in the 21st century, the new international language would be Mandarin. And back then, I also had a few Chinese friends, and so I thought, why not give it a try? And then I asked my mom, and she said, "Yeah, we have this Confucius Institute. You can go sign up for a class." And I said, "Okay, let's give it a try." And then I noticed that they actually have an age limit, where you have to be 16 to register in a class. And it just so happened that the first class was on the day of my 16th birthday. And so I thought,
wow,
this is almost destiny, they say yuanfen. And then I said, I have to do this. Yeah. So
awesome.
That's my story of starting to learn Chinese.
Great. So your school didn't offer any Chinese class. You went outside the school.
Absolutely not. Actually, here in Montreal, or I don't know about Canada, but at least in the province of Quebec, there's very little, if not no opportunities to start learning before university. And so most people start at age, here we start university at age 19. So at 19 years old, most people start studying.
Right. So you are one of the earlier ones to start learning Chinese, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, in that Confucius Institute class, it was an evening class. So it was mostly people with more free time, maybe a little bit on the older side, and very few young people who had the time and the commitment to go and take an evening class to learn a foreign language.
It's interesting that the Confucius Institute actually put an age limit of 16. That sounds weird to me.
Yeah, I could understand because, if there's a lot of young children in the class, it could be hard to manage the discipline. And so they just want, I guess, mature enough students to take it.
Fair enough. So what has been your biggest motivation in learning Chinese?
From the start, what I always like to compare learning Chinese to is kind of like going to the gym, where you see every day, you see your progress, you see your muscles grow. And in the same way, I liked keeping track of my progress and how many, I know this is not a real measure, but how many words I knew and how many characters I could recognize. And I felt good inside, just knowing that day by day I get better and better. I know more and more characters, more and more words. I can understand more and more. One of the ways I like to keep track of my progress was to listen, for example, to the same song maybe a few weeks apart. And then the first time I'd understand like 10-20% of the lyrics. The second time, maybe 50%. And then, I'd come back to it maybe once a year and see how much of it can I understand now.
Right. So you basically keep yourself going by constantly referring back to your progress.
Yeah, exactly. It's really my progress that kept me motivated. And those parts of my study where I really felt like giving up was when I would hit that plateau when I didn't know how to push myself further, because if I wanted to challenge myself and try something harder, anything I would find would be just too hard. And so I couldn't keep progressing in that way. And everything I already knew or everything I saw before was too easy. And so I was stuck in this kind of stagnation period, and that really demotivated me a lot. Yeah, on the other hand, it was this constant improvement that helped me keep going all these years.
Right, I see. So basically at the beginning, when you just started learning Chinese, you just wanted to learn Chinese because you just feel this is the language of the future and because you had some Chinese classmates. Was it just because of that?
Yeah, it was just like that, just for curiosity, just to spice up my life, to add something new to it.
When you reach a bottleneck or when you feel it's going too difficult for you, what was the thing that motivated you, that kept you going, apart from just looking at your progress?
Yeah, though those periods were hard. Actually, at that kind of time, I felt really bad inside, because I would look at all these people on YouTube and these foreigners who say like, oh, I've learned Chinese for 2 years, and then I hear them speak or read, and they're so good. And I look at myself, I've been learning for, let's say, 3 years, and I'm not even at that level. That means there's room for improvement, but why can't I do it? Why am I at this period where I'm stuck and I can't move forward? How can I ever reach their kind of level? And then it took some time. I couldn't move forward, and then maybe a new friend came along who showed me something I could do. I needed some kind of breakthrough to get past these bottlenecks.
Right. Cool. Well, now please share with us your method of learning Chinese. What's been the most effective technique or method that's been working for you learning Chinese?
Yeah, your listeners might be a little bit disappointed, but because a lot of my methods are, I think, very ineffective. What I like to do was grasp at about everything. Whenever I saw something, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go look at that. I'm going to go look at that. I'm going to see this. Oh, what is this? This is a cool new thing. A new TV show, a new interview with Dashan. I liked looking at everything. And so I can't really pinpoint one specific thing that helped me improve my overall level. One beginner intermediate level TV show I can recommend that I've watched a lot is called 成长汉语, and it stars a foreign I think teenager, young adult actor with two Chinese, and they're in school, and so they have a lot of different environments that they act out. And I was a big fan of his back then when I just started learning, because he won the Chinese bridge, or he got a good place there, and I thought, just so young and so good at Mandarin, I want to be like him too.
成长汉语.
Yes, that's correct. Growing up with Chinese, that's the English name.
I see. Where did you watch that?
I think it was a Chinese website, because I remember the videos being slow to load, but I'm not quite sure.
Right. I see. Well, that's interesting. So you started learning with all sorts of medium, basically.
Yeah.
You watch TV, you listen to music, you basically watch online videos and all that. If you are to study Chinese all over again, what would be your method now?
Oh, that's really hard to say, because looking back at it, those times were really difficult, and it was almost like a self-inflicted torture, where I would come home and I would think like, oh, what is this? This is so complicated. Why am I doing this to myself? And this is part of the reason why I think I might never learn again a foreign language, because I realize the amount of effort it takes to learn and to have a good level at a foreign language. And so I'm not sure what I would do if I had to restart, but I would not like to restart, that's for sure. Yeah.
So if you are to restart, would you say you focus on one method?
If I were to restart, The one thing I noticed that's good is that if you take one piece of text or one speech or a song or whatever, and you repeat it over and over and over and over again until you get sick of it. But then those words, those phrases, this manner of speaking, it gets so ingrained in your head that all this syntax you thought was weird, all these words you didn't know how to use, they become almost second nature. And so when you see that kind of structure again, you just feel like, yeah, I've seen this a million times already. It's okay. Whereas maybe your classmates will be like, this is a new kind of sentence, or I've seen this only once. I'm not sure exactly. And so I feel like reinforcing your knowledge almost to the point of being sick of it is can be a good thing.
Right. I guess maybe that's how it has helped you to do well on your Chinese competition, I guess.
Perhaps, yeah.
Well, you are the winner of Chinese bridge competition, so that's a great achievement. You got to share with us how you did it.
Well, actually, what happened was that I took a Chinese class at university. In the end, it didn't change much because it was the highest class available, and already then it was below my level. So I didn't learn too much from that class. But there was one student who participated in the Chinese bridge last year. The year before. And he told me, look, Andrei, I think you can really go far, and I think you should do this. And so I asked myself, and I thought, yeah, this could be a thing I'd want to do. But then I'm the kind of person who likes to, I don't like to participate just to participate. I like to participate to perform. And so, for example, when I was little, I would do math competitions every year, and I would win at least one, if not multiple every year. I participated to win. And so again, I told myself, if I do this, I have to do well. And I set myself a very rigorous schedule where I would be learning Chinese every single day without an exception. And so on Monday, I would meet with my teacher apart from class just to practice my speaking. On Tuesday, I would go to a language exchange to practice my speaking again. I knew my speaking was my worst out of all four skills. On Wednesday, I met up with a tutor who looked at some previous year's questions of the Chinese bridge competition, and she helped me learn more about Chinese culture and things that they could ask for in the competition. And so every day I had something, and it didn't matter if I had to spend 2 hours to go to the place, or if I invested 3 hours of time just to get a 20-minute improvement out of it. It was all worth as long as I was getting something every day, because I know that if you want to learn a language and you want to improve quickly without losing what you've learned, it's very important to do it regularly, and not only regularly, but often. And that's especially true at the beginner intermediate level. If I can share a story, it's when I just passed the HSK 3. There was no class at the Confucius Institute because it was summer. And so I hired a private tutor, and then the person would come to my house every day at 8:30 in the morning, and for 3 hours, I would look at text, learn things. And then the rest of the day, I would review that, because I knew that the day after, my tutor would come back. And if I didn't review what I learned today, then that would be wasted. We have to move on. We have to learn new things. And on top of that, it was my own hard-earned money. So I really felt like I needed to take this seriously. And that everyday routine is what kept me going, and also kept improving my level very, very quickly. Over the course of the summer, I went from HSK 3 to HSK 5. Just, I think it was 1 month or something like that.
Wow. So that's interesting. So you basically mentioned a few very good points about how to learn Chinese. You see, one thing is you have been consistent about it. And the second thing is being consistent, which formed into a routine that you keep learning every single day.
Absolutely.
And how long did you spend every day on learning Chinese?
It's a little bit hard to quantify, but because in my case, I used it almost as a procrastination tool. It's something I liked. And so if I didn't want to do my homework, I wouldn't go on the internet and play some games, and I would just go and I would watch a Chinese video, and I would learn some words in it, or I would review some characters. And so that way I was kind of wasting my time because I wasn't doing my homework, but at the same time I felt like I was wasting in a useful way. I was getting something out of it. And so in that way, I actually did improve on a daily basis.
What a fantastic way to procrastinate. Well done.
Thank you.
To our listeners, if you don't feel motivated in doing anything, just learn some Chinese. There you go.
Yeah.
One more thing you mentioned was accountability. So you hired a tutor and you made yourself accountable for that. You spend the money, so you really had to put in the work in order to get your Chinese to the level for the competition, I guess. At what stage did you decide to go into the Chinese bridge competition? Like, were your Chinese already at a very good level, or were you still at an intermediate level?
No, when I decided to go for it, I was like, I could do HSK 6 without too much problems. But to be frank with the viewers and everybody, HSK 6 is not a very high level. It's compared to some standards for maybe European testing, it doesn't correspond to the highest level of a European language test what they have in Europe. And so I felt myself confident, at least in reading and writing, because those are the two main skills that are tested in the HSK. And my weakest point was speaking, because throughout those 4 years I had learned up to then, most of it was done at home. Most of it was done, riding the metro, looking at some vocabulary, some characters, looking at some HSK sample exams in class because I didn't want to listen to whatever the teacher was saying. And so I had very little exposure to face-to-face conversation. And I knew that if I was to go to the Chinese bridge, this was a very important skill to have. Because not only, first and foremost, there's a lot of rounds where you have to do a speech, but also it is, in the end, a TV show. And what they care about is not how well you can read, but whether you can speak in front of the camera in a confident way. And so I did need to practice that a lot. And that's why, I decided I needed speaking practice every single day throughout the whole year.
That's interesting. So you mentioned you spend most of the time studying by yourself at home.
Yeah.
So did you travel to China to learn any Chinese, or did you spend all your time really just learning from school?
It went like that. So when I signed up the first time for Confucius Institute, I signed up level 2 right away because I didn't want to waste too much time with like a lower level. I learned a bit by myself. I studied a lot on my own so that I could skip levels at that school. And then already when I couldn't take any hard classes there, I just studied on my own. And then I realized that I'm not learning any speaking at all. And so I signed up for this kind of summer camp in China. And so I went there. It was a total of 2 weeks, and I hoped it would boost my speaking skills. It didn't do a lot because I didn't have a good base to begin with. The only really good thing I had was pronunciation. And so I would say like, "Hello, my name is this, and I do this," and everybody would go, "Wow, your Chinese is so good." But it wasn't. It was just I knew how to pronounce the words correctly. Yeah, so that was 2 weeks. I spent another week there that same year. But in total, even up to today, including the competition, which lasted a month, I haven't spent more than 2 months in total in China, and I've never studied in China.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. So that's amazing. You study on your own without traveling to China to do the immersion type of study, because I know a lot of people who reached fluency level, they actually traveled to China, lived in China for some immersion, but you didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's one of the reasons I don't really like when people ask me, like, how long have you been studying? Because not only is it hard to quantify how much you do every day, but also the environment. It's very different if you're living in China and doing an immersion, or if you're here, or it's just different conditions.
So when you study on your own, how did you practice your pronunciation? How could you tell that your pronunciation is right or wrong?
The thing that helped me a lot, actually, was the fact that I already knew 3 languages, and especially Russian, because it has a lot of different sound variety. So I had the actual sounds correct from the get-go, like the pinyin, I could say the exact sounds. And so really the problem was, could I get the tones in a good way? And so that was quite a bit of practice. And like a lot of people say, it's really about imitation. And when I said I would watch maybe one speech over and over and over again until I got sick of it, it would stick in my head and I would say it out loud over and over and over again until I got this kind of feel of a Chinese person. Sometimes when you hear people talk, you might not hear what they're saying, but you know what language it is. And if you can get that feel just by speaking, that people will hear and they'll know he's speaking Chinese. That's the level you want to get. That's when you can say I have the right pronunciation. They don't know what I'm saying, but just from the overall feeling they get, they know it's Mandarin. And another thing I did to correct myself when I asked my friend, is it good enough? He said there's still some problems. Is that I recorded myself speaking. I took a recording. I recorded myself speaking, and then I could hear the difference, the little difference between what the Chinese person was saying and what I was saying. And so these little details I worked very hard to correct as well, just step by step to get closer and closer to a true 普通话.
Nice. So lots of practice, lot of imitation, and record yourself, listen to yourself, and compare.
Yeah, it's really the comparison, because a lot of people, they might not hear that that their pronunciation is not exact. Just like people, when they sing, they might not hear that they're off pitch.
Great. How did you learn how to read or write in Chinese?
But there's not much secret to that. It's just reading more and more and more. And the more you read, the more you get used to saying the same characters over and over again. For me, it was just about the amount I read.
Great. So what have been your biggest challenge in learning Chinese, and how did you overcome it?
Like I said, my biggest challenge was probably those demotivational periods where I had this kind of phase where I couldn't get through to the next level. And so at that point, what I had to do is find some kind of pushing power to bring me up. When I was a beginner, what helped me push to the next level was when I hired the private tutor. When I was at a more higher level, what helped me push to the next level was the consistent day-to-day speaking, and just these kind of energy boosts that I needed to stop the stagnation. What helped me the most.
Right, I see. So basically, when you reach a stagnation point, you just had to keep yourself motivated by...
Find something new. Find something you haven't done, something that could bring you some outside force to keep you going. Yeah.
Great. Now share with us an embarrassing or funny moment when you were learning Chinese.
There's one thing that happened. It was about a year into my studies where I met some new Chinese friends, and we went to this Chinese restaurant. And so they started ordering, and we had like a bunch of really typical Chinese food. And then they asked, 要不要点鸡肉? And I thought, oh, I learned this word, 鸡肉. Yeah. Oh, it means muscle. Okay, so they ordered like heart and liver and kidneys. Yeah, muscle, yeah, why not? Okay, let's try 鸡肉. And then this arrived, and I tasted it, and I thought, oh, this tastes really good. And next time I go to the supermarket, I gotta go find where I can buy muscle. And then the next day it hit me. Wait, hold on. 鸡肉, that's just chicken. It's two different characters. One means muscle, the other means chicken. But they're just pronounced in the same way. And so that was a little bit funny and embarrassing.
Yeah, no, that's pretty funny. 鸡肉 is the same pronunciation.
Yeah.
Well, now tell us a success story, a most rewarding moment after you have become fluent in Chinese.
Yeah, maybe apart from the Chinese bridge, a lot of little rewarding moments in my everyday life here in Canada. There was one time I was waiting in the metro, and this old man comes to me, and he holds up a paper, and he couldn't speak English or French, and he just points at that paper, and it's the name of a metro station, and he wanted directions. He couldn't understand what I was saying and where to go. But then I see on the back of the paper there were some Chinese characters. So I told him in Mandarin, do you speak Mandarin? Do you want me to tell you how to go? And his face had such an expression of relief, like, thank you. It's like an angel that descended from heaven to save me in this troublesome situation. And I felt really good to be able to help this person who otherwise would have been stuck. Yeah, and
Nice.
just day to day, sometimes when people find out that I speak Mandarin, it's really good to see their reaction and how they're impressed.
Yeah, definitely. So what are you doing with your Chinese now?
Really not much, because when I didn't learn with a goal in mind. I didn't want to go to China and get a job or become an actor, do anything. So right now, the way I would describe what I do with my Chinese is just enjoy it. It's part of my life now. I can enjoy a lot of media that I couldn't enjoy before. I read Chinese books maybe every day for an hour maybe, and they don't have translation to English. And so if I didn't know language, I couldn't be enjoying this book. But right now I can, and so I feel glad, and I'm just happy to have that.
So how would you compare your life before you have learned Chinese and your life after you have learned Chinese?
Before I learned Chinese, my life was a lot about math. I was really into math. Like I said, I participated in competition for a year, and it was almost like it was one dimensional. And then when I started learning Chinese, it's like it opens this big door, even on the internet. But there's so many websites, so many cool things that if you don't know the language, you just can't use. And I made a lot of new friends learning it. Met a lot of cool people. And it's a transformation that you can't really go back. You can't tell people, no, I don't speak Chinese anymore. Don't come ask me to host your Chinese gala. I don't want to do this. It's like everyone knows you're the guy who they're going to come get if they need a foreigner who speaks Mandarin in town.
Yeah, definitely opens up a lot of opportunities for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, now share with us one special thing about the Chinese culture that is different to your own culture.
Yeah, there's this one thing that actually, not that it bothers me, but I found quite special the more I interacted with Chinese people, is that when they find out that you learn Chinese, they'll always ask you, like, what's your favorite place in China? And what's your favorite Chinese meal? And, oh, let me tell you about this piece of history, and this and this and that. And, China has 5,000 years of history. And it's something you wouldn't expect from, let's say I learned German and I had a German friend. He wouldn't come to me and tell me like, oh, do you like our German food? What's your favorite? Have you been to these cities? Oh, let me tell you about the history of, Prussia and back then in Germany. He wouldn't do that. And that's something I found that's quite different for Chinese people. They seem proud of this heritage that is carried on with their language, all this. Whether it be the food or the history and whatever.
The Chinese definitely are proud of the history, the culture, and the language.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to ask you this now. Do you have a favorite city in China?
Well, my total time I spent in China isn't that big, and the places I visited, it was a few days usually, or a week at most. But one place I really liked is actually Shenzhen, because first of all, it's a really modern city and it's new. It only has a few decades of history, and it's really beautiful in the way that all the buildings there, I mean, not all, but a lot of them are unique. Whereas I would go to other cities, and what I would see as the bus rolled down the street is the exact same carbon copy of the exact same tall rise. Whereas rolling around Shenzhen, it felt like, oh, here's this kind of architecture, and here's this kind of special building, and oh, look at this fancy ball on top of the building. And so I like that. Maybe another good thing is that the air pollution level is relatively low there, which is always a good thing. Yeah.
Cool. Is there a tool, an app, or a website that you cannot live without in learning Chinese?
For sure, the Pleco dictionary. I discovered it quite late, maybe 4 years into my studies. I don't even know if it existed before, but it's really useful because in the way that it presents characters, it's not only like the pinyin, there's not only the tones, as in the accents, but there's always a color. And that's very important because I feel like when you memorize things, it's important to have different sources of information, different ways to memorize. And so you can memorize the accent that you see on top of it, or the number, but also the color. And so if you forget one, you can kind of remember the other, and that helps a lot. Also, it has a lot of, you can make flashcards. It's great for studying, example sentences. That's for a dictionary. And a website, I would say maybe YouTube, because I don't really go on the Chinese video websites because the videos load slowly from here in Canada. But
Sure.
On YouTube, it's great. I just click links everywhere, and I find so many cool videos. I find it's great.
That's true. A lot of Chinese people upload very popular Chinese videos from the Chinese website up to YouTube.
Yeah, and I just keep browsing, related videos. You click one, you click the other, and then you're all over the place and you learn all these cool things. It's really great.
Yes, YouTube is definitely good. Like connecting to Chinese website from Australia is also very slow, so I have to say.
Really?
Yeah, it's not that fast. Although
Yeah.
Australia is closer to China compared to Canada to China, the speed is still not great. That's true. And also, if you are in China, you're trying to connect to a US website or any website outside China is going to be slow as well.
Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah, for the viewers, if you're in China, I recommend that don't go on YouTube. Go on the Chinese video websites. You'll get the same kind of learning potential and at a faster speed.
Yes. Awesome. So if you are to recommend to our listeners only one book in learning Chinese or the Chinese culture, what would that be?
There's this one book. It's actually a series of 3 books, and it's pretty thick. It's called 上下五千年. And it's about Chinese history, the 5,000 years of Chinese history. And it really goes from all the way from primitive, I shouldn't say cave people, but, from the really beginning all the way to modern times. It's really great. I think it has a few pictures. Yeah. And just a good book.
Great. 上下五千年.
Yeah.
So now, teach our listeners your favorite Chinese quote, phrase, or an expression.
One quote I really like goes like this. It's 众人拾柴火焰高. And so what it means, 众人 is everybody, the people. And 拾 means to collect or to pick up. 柴, firewood. So when everybody collects firewood, 火焰高, the flame burns high. And it's essentially a metaphor for saying that the power of many people together can be a very big strength. So it promotes, unity and collaboration.
That's a very interesting quote. To be honest, I've never heard of it before, but now I've heard it. It's a nice quote. I like it. 众人拾柴火焰高. Yeah, this is really nice. Where did you hear it from? Where did you learn that?
It's hard to say. Sometimes I browse around and I see some random quotes. And I think, oh, this sounds cool, and then I incorporate it into my things I know. Nice. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard for me to say where I learned things.
Cool. If you are to give our listeners one single piece of advice in learning Chinese, what would that be?
Like I said before, everybody, do not slack off. Do not be lazy. Practice your Chinese diligently every day or almost every day. The excuse I really don't like to hear is I don't have time. Because saying I don't have time is equivalent to saying I have other things that I would prefer do rather than studying Chinese. If you really want to go far, if you really want to do well, please do it at a good frequency and keep yourself in check.
Great advice. Put Chinese as a high priority in your life to make
Absolutely.
Sure you study it every day. If you really want to do it, since you're already committed to learn Chinese, you better make it a high priority.
Yeah.
So Andrei, just before we let you go, how can our listeners reach you?
So for anyone who wants to reach me or chat with me, feel free to add me on WeChat. I'm sure Victor can send you my contact information. Yeah.
Cool. I'll add that to the show note. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrei, for sharing your story in learning Chinese. That's a great journey.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for having me today. It was a pleasure to be on this podcast and to share my experience. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
To our listeners, the show note is now available at ChineseTalkEase.com/12. Talkese is spelled as Talkeze. Do you want to learn Chinese for free? Start your own journey to Chinese fluency with my video lessons at ChineseTalkEase.com. Talkese is spelled as Talkeze. Also remember to join our Facebook group. Just head over to TalkChineseCommunity.com. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Each month, I will choose one reviewer and give out a 1-year subscription to all my premium video lessons for free. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next episode.